interestingly enough, people yelling things like, Isa loves you. And I think they thought that was an insult. And Isa, of course, the word for Jesus in Arabic. And I at first I thought it was a supporter. And I'm like, oh yeah, Isa loves you too. And then I realized that face was not a supporter. There's people that I knew who had been going to the rallies in this area that he was having. And what they would do is they would stand in silent protest whenever he would bring up issues of hate speech against anybody, but Islamophobia in particular. A man named Marty Rosenbluth, he made these 8-pointed badges, yellow badges, reminiscent of what Jews had to wear during the Nazi era. It really resonated with him when Trump was talking about having Muslims be in a registry of some kind, in some type of database that would be tracked. When this rally was coming up, I thought, you know what, I'll join them. It seemed, harmless enough at the time. We would just stand up, put the badges on, and we would be asked to leave. And hopefully there would be some media attention around it and somebody would say something. And that's what the intention had been, was to go there with that. There's a lot of misunderstanding or a lot of fear about Muslims stems from the fact that people don't know Muslims or haven't had a chance to meet them. So I thought that my being there, on the one hand, I was a little nervous that they wouldn't let me in. We had heard that at a previous rally, they were kind of asking how loyal people were to Trump. And I didn't want to lie. And I thought if somebody asked me, I would just tell them that I was there to listen, which was true. I really was curious to see if a lot of the stuff that we were hearing was just hyped up by the media or they were just taking things out of context. So I was really curious about that. I wanted to hear what was going on. We were there for a couple hours before he even got there. And so I had this opportunity to engage with the people around me. We were having conversations. People were sharing their popcorn. We were taking pictures of each other. When he came on and he started talking about Syrian refugees, and he was saying how, just total blatant lie, because we knew the opposite to be true. He was saying that the only people coming were young Muslim men who had cell phones with videos of Americans being decapitated, and that they hate us, and that's what they're coming here for, is to kill us, basically, is what he was saying. And so we stood there for a while before the Trump folks realized we were there. One of the reasons they noticed us was because we had purposely positioned ourselves in front of the cameras, which just coincidentally happened to be right behind Trump. So that's kind of the narrative that went out. And I tried to dispel that narrative consistently, but the narrative kept going back to, I was just kicked out because I was Muslim. And I kept saying, there was other people with me. There was a purpose. And we were there with a reason. We knew we would be asked to leave. There was a woman who had been sitting in front of me, she and I had not interacted, but she grabbed my hand and she said, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. And then when I got out to the aisle, there was people who were like, yelling at me, saying, there was one older guy, I was so surprised by his behavior. It just really surprised me, because I was like, you would think that somebody of this age would have a little more decorum, but he was yelling at me, asking me if I had a bomb. And I walked up to him. I found it comical. I thought, like, maybe if he looked at me in the face instead of just looking at like this stranger, if he would back off a little, but he didn't. He was still as vile. And whereas before people were fine, it wasn't until, and this was the whole point of the protest, was this concept of how hate speech can incite a crowd and could motivate people to do things that they probably wouldn't do on a day-to-day basis. So he was yelling that. There was a guy who came out and yelled at me and said that, we don't want you here, I need to leave. There was, interestingly enough, people yelling things like, Isa loves you. And I think they thought that was an insult. And Isa, of course, the word for Jesus in Arabic. And I at first I thought it was a supporter. And I'm like, oh yeah, Isa loves you too. And then I realized that face was not a supporter. A very distinct contrast between, how it was before and then when he started saying these things, it's just proven over and over and over again that when you otherize anybody, that gives people license to mistreat them.